Hey, welcome to the Elle Russ Show. My name is Elle Russ, and I am a #1 best-selling author and master coach. My intention is to inspire, educate, and motivate you with weekly content featuring amazing guests and solo episodes. Visit my website, elleruss.com, to learn more about me, my courses, free masterclasses, partner discounts, and much more. Enjoy the show. Hey everyone, today we have Marian Clark. She is a somatic nervous system coach, which is going to be very fascinating. She's on a mission to help women free themselves of emotional overwhelm, create a life from a place of confidence and calm. Welcome to the show, Marian.
Hi, Elle. Thank you. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
So let's start off with, what's a somatic nervous system coach? What's the word somatic mean? Give us a rundown.
Yeah, great question. So somatic therapy is a little bit different than traditional talk therapy. And it's really where we're connecting. It's a body-centric approach to help release tension, stress, trauma from the body. But we're working more from the connection of the body and mind together, as opposed to just coming from the brain.
Give us a little bit of a real life. How does that look? What's the example of that? What does this mean?
Yeah. So, under somatic therapies, there's so many different types of therapy. So this can be, things like breath work. A lot of people have heard about. That's really popular, but it can also be other sort of, psychotherapies that people get into. The therapies that I use, which I really love, are things like EFT, emotional freedom therapy. So this is, for instance, where you're tapping and you're talking. Or EMDR is a very mind-body therapy where you're also tapping as you're talking. So anything that's using the body in connection with the brain to help process out. And obviously every therapy has its thing that it's trying to focus on, but it's where you're connecting the mind and body together, where they start to work in harmony, as opposed to like a disconnection. You're trying to bring somebody back into an embodiment work where they're more harmonized between the two.
That reminds me a lot of back in when you go through like a major acting academy or that kind of thing. We do Alexander technique and Feldenkrais. Those two remind me a little bit about what you're talking about. They were right. Like you'd be sitting up and it was very light. Like it's like the person is in the back. They just have like maybe a finger touch on a part of your back and they're telling you to imagine, like your head rising, your neck, like, it's very interesting. It's subtle and it also is like effective.
Yeah. So for instance, when I'm working with a client, I will ask them, if we're working on a certain difficult emotion or something that, maybe they've had to trigger from the week, and they're coming into a session with me, we'll start to ask like, okay, where is that in your body? Where are you feeling it? So exactly what you're talking about. It's connecting the thoughts and the emotions that you're having, but you're trying to locate them in the bodies to get more in touch with the body, so that the body we can access this incredible source of wisdom that we have within the body, and how it's trying to also help us, lead us, direct us.
Take me through an example, if you will, of like, here's someone who has this type of trauma, then we do this is what it would look like. So we can visualize perhaps how someone might be taken through and helped with something like this.
For sure. So it really depends on the type of therapy. I mean, the ones that I specifically focus on are things like the EFT, emotional freedom technique, matrix imprinting, which also you do visualization work, and then IFS, internal family systems. And all of those therapies, what you're doing is somebody's coming into a session and you're asking them where they are experiencing, this place in the body that, for instance, say they're struggling with anxiety and they're really struggling with some sort of heavy emotion, and how a lot of the times I work with people is I first start to get them to tap, because when you start to help the body through an experience, say like tapping, for instance, when you're tapping on these points of the body, what actually is happening is that the nervous system is helping to get calmer. And in that place, the nervous system then is speaking to the brain and vice versa. But what we know, say from MRI studies, is that this tapping process, working with the body is actually sending messages to the brain for certain parts of the brain to be calm. So if someone's got a lot of anxiety, usually it's that the amygdala, which is the fear center of the brain, is very activated. And so when you're working with the body with something like tapping or breath work, you can actually start to help that part of the brain be calmer because the body is starting to feel calmer. So someone will come in for a session and I'll literally have them do breathing exercises. I will have them start to tap. I will have them start to locate that emotion inside of their body so they can start to feel it. And often also when you're doing that, asking them to feel it in their body, it's also helping them to kind of get out of the overthinking stage as well. So when they're feeling it in the body, they're able to talk about that experience in a different way, describe that sensation in a different way. And rather than overthinking it, starting to feel it from a different perspective, rather than just thinking about their emotions. So you're helping them to feel them, but at the same time, you're also getting them to tap through them so that the brain can actually start quieting down. And what they know is that when the brain quiets down through helping regulate the nervous system, the somatic work, is that other parts of the brain start coming back online, like the hippocampus, where memories are stored. So it's this kind of experience where you're working with the body, helping the brain be calm. And then through that place, you can actually process your emotions in such a different way and actually start to feel calm in a very different way as well.
I love it. Let's how did you get into this work and what was your choice? What were you drawn to here?
Yeah, so thanks for asking. I grew up in a really healthy family because I grew up on the west coast of Canada. And, my parents were kind of hippies. They sort of lived off the land. We grew our own vegetables. I was homeschooled. My dad, we lived off like incredible salmon and we had a big vegetable garden. So I grew up very like in a healthy and holistic way, but I really struggled. I started really struggling with my health. Now, my mom has autoimmune, so it runs in the family, but for me, I was aware of a lot of health principles, living healthy. But for me, I started to hit this place in my 20s and 30s of burnout where my autoimmune issues were really kicking up. And I had tried so much physical healing. And I think I was pretty like aware and good and biohacking and all this kind of stuff because my parents had done that for so long, but I was still hitting a wall with my health. And then I'd had a lot of talk therapy because my parents were into that as well. They'd, experience like we grew up in a family that was very open, but for some reason, I just was hitting a wall with even just talking about things. And I discovered somatic work in my mid-30s where I realized that my nervous system was so dysregulated, where I had been kind of in this place of on the go all the time. So, coming to London, I live in the UK. I'd been a landscape architect. But I realized that so much of my health issues were really directed from this place where I was always in survival state, like always on the go, always trying to like prove myself, be a people pleaser, be perfect. And in that place, I wasn't doing very well. So I kind of had a burnout in my mid-30s, which then I discovered the work.
What was your burnout? What was your bottom? What were you feeling? What were your symptoms? And what was the like realization of like, oh my God?
Yeah. So first of all, I'd been in 2 abusive relationships. So I hadn't managed relationships very well. I'd been married. And that was really hard because I'd never come out of that marriage really healed from it. And I'd sort of just I continued just to keep running and going and hadn't, I'd talked through a lot of things, but I still had this sort of underlying anxiety all the time. And so there was those situations that were happening. And then I got into situations in London as a landscape architect designer where you're working a lot. Like the working conditions in London are crazy. You're doing a lot of overtime, highly stressful environment, a lot of chronic stress. And at first I thought I could do this where I was almost like loving the chronic stress hormones because you have all that cortisol and you're kind of you're in that place of feel like you're, doing so well, but really it's so unsustainable. So my burnout came where I just, physically I was burning out. I was burning out my immune system, my hormones, all of that kind of stuff. But I think more than that, also, it was the emotional part where I hadn't really stopped and dealt with these kind of traumatic things that had happened to me within this marriage that had broken up. And I had to really face myself also, because I realized that a lot of this was actually from myself, where I didn't know how to set healthy boundaries at work or with other people. I'd had these really unhealthy patterns and behaviors of people pleasing, trying to make everyone happy, perfectionism. So for myself, I was operating from a place of anxiety all the time, trying to fit in, or, that kind of classic overcaring, overgiving, but never from a healthy place. So for me, and I understood all this, I had awareness around it, but I couldn't help this like underlying anxiety where I was still operating almost automatically from these places that I couldn't stop myself. And with this somatic work, what I found is that it helped me get more to the basement of what was happening, the root, the subconscious parts of, myself, where I realized, wow, I'm doing this because I don't feel worthy. I don't feel good enough. I don't feel like I don't feel like I fit in. So I realized so much about myself that it was so much deeper, my patterns that I had from like when I was a child, and that had never really been healed inside myself. So for myself,
can you give us a few examples there, like just so people can relate? Like, what sort of behaviors or things are we talking about?
Yeah, so I think from childhood, a lot of this stuff can start where we maybe you have an experience. Like I was homeschooled, but when I did go to school, I was slightly bullied. And at that place, I felt, because I'd kind of grown up on an island in the middle of nowhere, I'd had a really beautiful childhood. But when I came to school and sort of encountered civilization, and had this sort of experience, I thought there was something wrong with me. And I, from that place, I hadn't ever dealt with that younger part of myself. So that younger part was still she was still there trying to fit in, trying to make everyone happy so she wouldn't get bullied again, so she wouldn't be made fun of again.
Right.
And so for me, I had to really go back and help her, come through that place of frozenness, of feeling isolated. But really for her, she was operating a lot in the background of my mind that I didn't realize. A lot of my patterns and behaviors then as an adult were from that place of vulnerability, as opposed to from a place of confidence and strength. So, with this work, I really found that, oh, wow, there she is. And it's like peeling the onion. You sort of find these parts of yourself that you realize are protective parts that are trying to help you, but really they're parts that need healing and integrating back into yourself, so they don't have these unhealthy behaviors and patterns as an adult, that really are not, real health or sustainable in your life. So
what some out of the people you've worked with, can you tell us some success stories, some 180-degree turnarounds, someone who came in with a certain situation and then being able to use somatic healing to help them move forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, a lot of the time I do tend to get women in their 30s and 40s. So similar, to me, in that place where they've hit this wall in health. And maybe they've tried, the physical stuff. They've tried, taking care of themselves more. They've tried the diet, nutrition, the gut healing, all that kind of stuff, which is so important, right? Absolutely. Only to say I'm so grateful for you and your support, because I had thyroid issues, and, that physical stuff has to be addressed. Absolutely.
Yeah, let me highlight that for just a minute, because, whether it's hypothyroidism or gut issues or it's affecting your brain, it's affecting your neurotransmitters, it's affecting your emotions, right? So the first order of business would be to clean up, right, what you're putting into your mouth towards any kind of healing, physical, mental, whatever, right? So many people go to paleo primal, whole food type of living for mental health. So
Yes.
it's all part of it. Yeah.
Yes. And it's foundational, like for sure. So I love your work, and it's helped me so much, also just to highlight that about, your book is incredible, and really you're absolutely right. That's got to be foundational first. However, I think what happens when people have tried a lot of that physical stuff, but still don't feel like they're healing, a lot of them turn to nervous system work or somatic work because um, somebody maybe has suggested it, that this could be that they're in a stressful state, that they don't feel calm, they don't feel peaceful, they find it maybe hard to relax, their mind is obvious, often overthinking, they can't kind of slow down, they're hyper vigilant, like always sort of looking for threat, can be very anxious, and even have a little bit of depression, that sort of place where maybe they've been so overwhelmed that now they might have fatigue or exhaustion or a bit of depression. So when clients come into, a lot of these women that come into me, they've experienced some sort of health crisis, usually around this place where they're like, okay, my body's just sort of quote unquote betraying me. And I've tried everything physically to heal, but I still feel that I'm struggling. So what I'm doing with them is I'm doing that nervous system work, the emotional support, where maybe they are still operating in a place of survival and they don't even know it because it's almost subconscious. It's almost become habitual now to them, that survival stress state where we now we're looking to almost rewire the nervous system for them, help them get into a calmer place. And that is where the somatic work comes in, because you're working with the body and the mind together to rewire the system.
I'm recalling an example that I heard. I was talking to, this is many years ago, and this kind of just showed up here for me in my brain, which is I was talking to someone who had a friend who had gone on a date with a woman who was very fit and good looking and, whatever. And, they're having a couple of drinks. He notices she's drinking a little too much and he's like, uh-oh. And then she's getting a little tipsy and he's like, oh gosh. And then she just starts bawling her eyes out. And he's like, and thank God that he was there. He's a very nice person. And he was like, oh my God, I'm sorry. What's happening? What's happening? And she like pulls up her shirt a little bit to show her stomach. She's like, she had been obese and had the gastric bypass surgery. Right. And so yes, this is the perfect example of you can fix the outside, right? And you look great, but she's bawling her eyes out. She still has trauma from the identity, right? All of the things going on in there. That's the perfect example of there's more to this story. You can't, it doesn't fix everything to just be skinny and pretty suddenly, right? You'd think so.
Yes.
People would go, oh my gosh, 400 pounds. And now you're, a fit person who could be on the cover of Shape magazine. This should change your life. It fixed it. It doesn't. There's emotional scars in there. There's PTSD in there, so that just came up in my mind as sort of like maybe the perfect, most extreme example of someone doing a health thing, but not still's life being ruined because they're not addressing the other.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it makes me think of one of my clients who similar, where she was a runner, a marathon runner, and incredible girl, like had done so much in her life, was high achiever. Normally these people are high achievers where they've done loads of stuff, come from very high achieving families usually. So, she was a physiotherapist. She had run a couple marathons, but she just hit this wall with chronic fatigue. And she came to me because she said, well, basically I've seen the naturopaths, I've seen the functional medicine doctors, but they tell me this is emotional for me and like some sort of, stress related thing. So when we worked together, we realized that there were, she realized inside of herself that there were these places where she was always running internally. It was almost like a metaphor, like, yeah, she ran the marathon, but also internally she was running so much from, she was running because her parents had put all this stress on her. And then she was running to keep, competition with all her sisters and keep, she had 4 sisters, they were all beautiful. And that competition she felt, and like, she'd never felt good enough and she didn't feel, worthy. And I think in that place, we can then, it's kind of like her, like she put all this emphasis into looking great and being super fit. But just like you're saying, that internal work is so important for not only your physical health, but also your life, and who you partner up with, and the decisions you make around your career and who you are. It can greatly impact us more than we realize, and then it can send us, if we haven't addressed those things, into a health crisis, because that state of survival, which is that parasympathetic state, which is not the healing state, which is can then or this, we want to be in the parasympathetic state, where she was in that sympathetic state of chronic stress, fight or flight. So it's really trying to identify, okay, where are these places where I'm constantly I feel like I don't feel safe, or I feel like I have to be on the go, or and I think people can almost think, believe that that's normal when it's not. And then what happens when we're living in that sympathetic state too long, we then can have a collapse. And this is a lot from polyvagal theory, where really we can go into that dorsal vagal state, where it is the collapse, it's the shutdown state. And people will say, oh, my body's betraying me. But I say, well, actually, your body's trying to protect you. It's like the car overheating, and the car shuts down because it's like, okay, this is too much for you. You've been living in this survival state for too long. I'm actually helping you by pulling you out. And everyone's very different, right? Some of us have a more finely tuned nervous system. And so I think a lot of highly sensitive people, they have a more sensitive nervous system, whereas, other people are not going to experience this as much. But so I tend to work with the more sensitive, the highly sensitive achievers, one could say.
Well, and one of the other things too is, you talk about how this dysregulated nervous system, right? It can lead to burnout, chronic fatigue, but autoimmune. Let's just want to highlight that. My friend Palmer Kippola, who wrote Beat Autoimmune, talks about sort of that, like you said, this hypervigilant immune system, right? If you're hypervigilant, you're in that fight or flight. For her, it was growing up with parents, like the dad being mean to the mom and her being in the middle and trying to mitigate and dance this dance, but probably that walking on eggshells, fight or flight, on the edge, right? And it's not to, and she says this too, it's not to say you're to blame for having an autoimmune disorder and it's your mentality and you should look. No, it's just, hey, there might be some other elements here contributing to this hypervigilance of your autoimmune system. And that's the kind of work you're doing. So if you do have an autoimmune disorder, I think Marian's work is what you really need to look into as well, to just address those things. Again, you can take away the gluten for the antibodies. You can do this, you can do that, but it's no different than what we just talked about, right? With the woman that had the gastric bypass surgery, just hasn't worked down the other part of it yet. That's all. Same thing with thyroid. Sometimes it's related to speaking up or not expressing your creativity or doing things in life. So there's just some spiritual and emotional components to everything. And hey, if you want a full recovery, if you want to give it the best shot, then we have to deal with these parts too.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly it, Elle. And and I think it is, I love what you said about, I love Paul Market for her work and everything. And that's exactly it. Those places where the dysregulation can start from a young age, and it's almost now you're not even aware of it. You're kind of on that automatic pilot. So when you do this work, you almost start to surprise yourself, like, oh, wow, I didn't even know I was operating in this way. And I think that's exactly it, that, with autoimmune, there's that idea around cell danger theory, that actually the cells start to operate when they feel that they're even that kind of slightly on edge feeling. And, exactly that example where maybe you've got parents. I mean, I grew up with a dad who was a total adventurer, a sailor, and he sailed all over the world. But my mom, who had a very sensitive nervous system, was always anxious about him going away. And sadly, he lost his life to the sea because he was a risk taker. But for my mom, it was very anxiety producing. And I think for her, it did not help her autoimmune. And for me, I grew up sensing that anxiety,
Yes,
so
yes, you feel it. Kids feel it. They feel tension. They feel that. Also, just want to say, so sorry your mom's worst fears came true, right? Like here she has this anxiety about it, and then it happened. God.
Yeah. That's right. And that's
Sorry for you
exactly it.
too as well. Sorry, I didn't mean to leave you out of that equation.
No, thank you. Well, and I think that's also it. It's that, anxiety is protecting us too. We have to remember it's not just this terrible thing. It's actually trying to help us. And but similar to your story about Palmer, like I always felt like I would say to my mom, is everything okay? Or I would be sensitive to it. And my mom, very lovingly would try and protect me. No, everything's fine, sweetie. But I think also when even that can happen when you're a child, is that in that place you're feeling it, but maybe because somebody isn't validating it, then also you're kind of, okay, something's wrong with me. And I think that can happen where then you have a feeling that something's wrong with this experience that you're feeling, but you're still carrying it with you. And so it's about going back and validating those places that really felt that and seeing them and working with them. And then recognizing that, yeah, this is a part of me that I can work with and love and take care of. And it doesn't have to be this threat to me. So
Would love to, before we wrap up, would love to hear some other interesting or maybe even surprising to you. Like, was there one where you're like, oh, someone came to me for this? That hasn't happened. Or that's a rare one, right? Where sometimes you see, it's just like with thyroid, right? Like sometimes you get all of the same kind of types of cases. And then there's one that comes in, you're like, all right, this one's new. You know what I mean? So I'm just curious, like, what are some things that might interest us or open up our minds to how this healing work can apply to, a variety of issues?
Yeah, well, I think the it's really about where this place, like I had a client and she had so much anger coming in. That's why she came to me, because she felt very emotionally dysregulated, with her anger. So everyone has a different way of feeling emotional dysregulation, but her anger she couldn't control. And I think what was really surprising for her is, because often we're working a lot with the subconscious here. So, as you might go to a traditional talk therapy, you're talking it out. But when you're just talking it out, you're using certain parts of your brain. When you're actually helping the body, and especially through things like EFT tapping, you're actually helping go deeper into subconscious parts. So as the amygdala shrinks, the hippocampus comes up and a lot of memories emerge with that for clients. And she discovered a memory where she was really surprised because her mom was really angry and she never remembered her mom, being so upset and angry. And she realized that she was never allowed to show anger. So, because her mom would get upset at her when she was angry, and she realized, oh, I thought that something was the matter with me because I was expressing anger. And so now it's popping up for her, but she had to really approach that anger and go, well, it was okay to feel angry, actually. Like, I need to be validated. So I think a lot of people from their younger parts have been told it's not okay to feel certain things, or and then they get into their adulthood and they're like, I'm really struggling with this emotion and it's a terrible part of me. They almost like don't like it. They hate it. They're trying to push it away. But actually, when you start to find that place, there's a reason that part of you has been created. And there's a reason it's trying to help you and speak to you. And really, it's about loving that part again, and realizing, no, nothing was the matter with you. Like, you were expressing a healthy part of you, anger, but it just wasn't allowed to be expressed. So I think clients are always surprised by the places they go with this therapy, because they think they know themselves. And then they all of a sudden find a memory or an encounter. Or I had another client who had real money issues around some things, and she would always get exhausted when talking about money issues. She would just want to shut down, have a sleep, and it was affecting her business. She couldn't move forward with her business. She was so overwhelmed. And so we started to do this work, and she found a place where her dad had gone through a similar financial issue when she was growing up, and he was tired all the time. And she said it was almost like she'd absorbed that energy, that belief system from him. And it was so incredible, because we literally did a couple sessions of this, tapping through this. And she never feels tired around money. Like, it might be like, okay, I've got to have good energy for that. But she literally would have to have a nap. And
she wins the lottery and she just passes out.
Yeah.
No,
So
it's, that's so interesting. Yeah, that what an interesting connection. That's again, like it's kind of random. You wouldn't kind of think of that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So I think you realize, oh, there's these places that I absorbed things as a child that I don't even remember, or like an imprint, right? It's a somatic imprint. So when we're imprinted, it doesn't just happen with a thought, like it's a somatic imprint through our senses. And so the body remembers, the body keeps the score. It's sensing all the time. So when we have any kind of threat or danger, the body will give a response to that. But that's the body trying to help us. So you're helping the body to calm down in those places again and move through those places where it felt stuck or frozen, or it couldn't resource for itself. You're helping the child, the younger part of yourself, the inner child, move through so that you can actually re-imprint your system in a healthier way. Yeah.
Tell us how we'll put everything to connect with you in the show notes on social media, but give us your website and tell us how we can benefit from your work, how you work with people, and what's available to us with your expertise.
Yeah, thank you. So I have my website is Una Wellness, and I work one-on-one with people. I also do group programs, which I really love. And, that's where I really feel people need a full experience of this. So when I work with people, I work not only with one-to-one sessions, but then also I'm trying to really educate people around this. So, educating them around nervous system work, where they're going through modules, my courses, because I don't think just having a session once a week, once every 2 weeks really transforms people. I think you need to have a full integration experience to have true transformation. And especially when you're trying to rewire the brain, your nervous system. So, I say nervous system work, the somatic work, it happens every single day. You do a little bit every single day. So I obviously have one-to-one sessions where we do the deeper work, but then I'm giving, all my clients resources where they have meditations, visualizations, homework, where they're learning about their emotions, nervous system. They're learning about things like how to set healthy boundaries, places where they can feel really dysregulated, how to do that deeper work. And I think that is where the real transformation happens, where they're doing that work themselves and then they're coming in for deeper sessions with myself, or they're in a group situation where they're sharing, experiencing on a deeper level with each other as well, because we can learn so much from each other as well.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. This work is really, I have a couple of friends who have used it, seen somatic practitioners, and it's really been a game changer for them. So if you're out there and this is something that is, piquing your interest, check out unawellness.com. Can you just spell the Una part? It's OON. I just want to make sure we get it right. I'll put it in the show notes, but just for people listening.
For sure. So it's OONA wellness.com.
Great.
Yeah.
Any last words you'd like to leave with our audience?
Yeah. Well, I would just say, if you feel really stuck, or you feel like you have this place where you can't find calm or peace inside yourself, you've been struggling with anxiety, you feel like you can't, I think we talk a lot about self-sabotage these days, where you're trying to do something and you just can't. You just feel like for some reason. I would say do the deeper work, do the subconscious work, because there's usually a reason that part is trying to help you. There's a part of you that is preventing you from moving forward in your life. And rather than fighting ourselves, we can actually learn to love all parts of ourselves, and heal in a way that is more loving and self-compassionate, and where you build real confidence, not just this kind of fake confidence, where you actually go and help those more vulnerable parts of yourself, so that you don't have to think you don't have to you can actually build confidence from a real foundational place in your life. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much. And for everyone else, we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Elle.
Hey listeners, over the years, a ton of companies have approached me to collaborate, but I will only promote companies whose products I believe in and that I actually use and consume on a regular basis. So let me tell you about some of my favorite companies that I can offer you discounts for. Rep Provisions, an amazing company doing incredible things for our planet, topsoil, and animals with regenerative agriculture, and it's my #1 source for quality pasture-raised meat and chicken. Visit repprovisions.com and use code L15 for 15% off. I'm also obsessed with a company called Carnivore Crisps. They make a lean, all-natural, and delicious alternative to conventional snacking, made with just real meat and real salt. Totally addictive, and my favorite ones are the beef brisket and the ribeye. Visit carnivorecrisps.com and use code PALEO10 for 10% off. I also love and regularly use Paleo Valley products. They make amazing supplements and delicious paleo products. I use the superfood greens powder, grass-fed beef sticks, the organ complex, and their bone broth bars. I love the lemon and apple. I also use their essential C complex and more. Visit paleovalley.com/promos/Elle Russ for 15% off. I also love Primal Kitchen. They make delicious paleo-approved, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and no refined sugar products, and I use them daily, from their collagen powders and sauces and marinades to their avocado and olive oil. So good, so healthy. Visit primalkitchen.com and use code L10 for 10% off. I also love paleo powder and use it almost on everything I cook. They make incredible seasoning blends, and they also have these incredible grain-free coatings that feel just like crispy breadings that you would have had prior to knowing that there's another way. So visit paleopowder.com and use code L15 for 15% off.